Cannabis is medicine.
And it's awesome.
Then let's push the envelope on a bunch of issues.
Today we have a guest that I've actually talked about several times for you that have paid attention. Many times this is as excited as I get about a guest, actually. He's the founder of the Work Shop.
Hold on. And that's in all deference to all our previous guests.
No offense to anyone.
Right.
But I've talked about him before. I think this is the right direction. This is the right way. I'm really excited about this.
Does he water ski?
He has a no. He has a lab dedicated to testing marijuana flowers, extracts, and other cannabis-based products for safety and accuracy. Please welcome to the show, Jeffrey Raber. And that's Dr. Jeffrey Raber.
Yes.
Welcome, Doc. How are you?
Thank you.
Welcome
Sorry
back.
about that earlier part above the show.
Well, he's
okay.
he's got more protoplasm.
No, I do
Now,
not. Water
doctor, education
organic chemistry PhD
from
USC, Southern California.
Pretty good.
I trained at USC. Anybody from USC is okay in my book. I like that. All right, what undergraduate?
Biochemistry undergraduate degree from Lebanon Valley College in Pennsylvania.
I went to Haverford.
Oh, wow. Okay.
How about that?
That's interesting.
So you go from Lebanon Valley all the way out to California.
Yep.
Was it the weather?
Yes. That was a major driver.
Listen,
Yeah. Plus opportunity.
I try to tell everybody.
Yeah.
You live in Vegas 4 months a year, you can't go outside.
Right.
You live in the East Coast 4 months a year, you can't go outside.
No.
That's a third of your life. Is that really what you want to spend? The
Other third, you're probably sleeping.
Right,
so.
right, like another third. So essentially, you have 1/3 of your life that's okay.
Yeah.
That's not worth it to me.
No, me neither.
Obviously, you see it the same way.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Ron wants to jerk you off a little bit. So let's do that.
Oh, for Christ's sakes.
I didn't think I signed up for that.
Why don't you
Well,
tell our audience a little
it's
bit
early.
about what you do at your lab there, because this is the direction I think cannabis is moving.
Sure. We do like analytical testing predominantly for, as you mentioned, safety and understanding the profile, like which chemicals and molecules are present in all of the cannabis products.
And what's going on is we've talked about this on the show many times, that people go to a dispensary here in L.A. and they buy, let's say, Charlie Sheen or whatever strain they pick, and they bought it from 8 different dispensaries. Then they take them to a lab like yours and they test them. Not even close.
Right. Correct.
And is that what's going on?
It's very prevalent, unfortunately. So we saw it. You could recognize it was happening when sampling in a dispensary. You would see them actually like misname things intentionally in front of you, and recognize it's not an indicator for patients or doctors or anyone to kind of communicate about and talk about which medicine or products are right for them.
Dr. Frank here runs into that problem. He talks to his patients about where they're trying to find out which ailments are helped with which strains. But that's really hard because the strains aren't really accurate between one to the next, right? Doc?
I wouldn't even suggest it. I tell them, listen,
Yeah.
when you go to a place, find out what they have, buy the least amount of as many different strains as you can, go home, test them out, see what you like, because the names mean nothing.
That's right.
Now, I got a question for you. When you do these assays on these strains, are you finding, even within like one batch, even though they're all coming from the same plants, the same group of plants, are you finding a significant amount of discrepancies or non homogeneous results? Or
So you find a range of results. It's still the same ratios, just the absolute expression or total amount is different. So the bottom of the plant can be 10% cannabinoid, the top could be 20, closer
Right.
to the lights, depending upon how they cultivated it or how they mixed the bag or prepared the actual batch. It will get real interesting as regulations come and we start to define batches better. So that might help.
in what way?
You'll have 10 pounds that you can kind of homogenize and identify this is my batch. They might take the tops of the plants and say this is batch 1. The bottom is going to be a different batch. Maybe send that to pre-rolls. Right now it's just dry it up, mix it all up, and get whatever I can.
Now, is that going to be required by California law? Is that how it's
Yeah.
going to be?
Yeah, and they
'Cause we don't
will
have that
make
now.
sure it's homogeneous, so you have to understand that that batch is represented by an accurate number. And it will be within plus or minus 15% most likely of that actual value. So that should help to tighten it up a little
when you
bit.
say actual value, are you talking about percentage THC, CBD? You're talking about
Predominantly
terpenes?
those.
Just those two, not
Terpenes
CBN.
are going to be optional, and it depends on if you're putting that on your label or not as to how much you'll have to test for those.
No,
So that's not mandatory. And CBN won't be present in fresh flowers. So we shouldn't see CBN.
Well, are there no fresh flowers that are grown specifically for CBN? CBN is the
No, the plant doesn't make CBN, so you won't.
so
you won't
can't
get
do
there.
it. It's only a byproduct.
Yeah, it's an or artifact of analysis, which I think was part of what the gas chromatographs were giving us in the early stage, or really, really old cannabis will start to have that. So THCA goes to CBNA, and then you could decarboxylate and form CBN, or
Okay,
THC will oxidize to CBN too.
Now we know just from the people who've been on the show that CBN is a phenomenal sleep inducer.
So I wonder where this comes from.
I don't
Because
either.
I don't know
Because
if
that's
that's
what
actually true.
Because people are telling you this.
Anecdotally, we hear it
See,
constantly.
That's why we want scientists on the show, because
Yeah.
they're saying, listen, if you use CBD, nobody's grooming plants or cloning plants in order to produce high CBN. And CBN is that component, with that phytocannabinoid, which was the most sleep-inducing, which is the most to affect, insomnia. Now,
Oh, sure.
I don't know this stuff.
No, I mean, I've read reports back in the 70s that said it was inducing hypothermia and muscle loss, like loss of muscle control.
Well, then
So,
you've been using
I
CBN
don't
for a
know
long
if you
time.
want a large amount of it. We've seen THC degrade and had some people take CBN and they didn't feel sleepy at all. So it may be that it's the whole cannabis composition with some CBN. So do I have the right terpenes with THC and or a little CBD and some CBN? And that's what causes a sedative effect for some. But I think we can't really extrapolate one molecule causes this. It's got to be about the whole cannabis composition
The entourage.
instead.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right, a lot of people are talking. I'm working with a lot of different people. We got a bunch of different studies going, this and that, and more than one outside research facility is focusing significantly on the terpene profile in order to, try to sell this as one thing or another. So obviously, you're doing your research up,
Yep.
in your lab. You're doing your work on the CBD. You're doing on the THCA, the THC, CBN. How much focus are you putting on terpenes?
Oh, most of our focus is there. So in 2011, we started testing for terpenes. We're the first commercial lab to do it. You could see multiple cannabinoid profiles from, like, say, 3 or 5 different strains that you could overlay on top of themselves. They all look the same, but they smell different, they taste different, and elicited different physiological effects.
And that's the big thing that I don't think people know. People think we know THC, we know the level of THC, we know sativa, we know indica, but people don't know that terpenes, you say, are a major driver of the overall physiological response.
Yeah, we can take the same concentrate and put different terpene compositions in them and see different responses for different people. So,
Now, terpenes, just for our audience, are not just in the cannabis plants. You can get terpenes from lemon rinds, from pine, from pine needles, from it's called pinene, limonene, that kind of stuff, myrcene. So, do you see a situation where you can potentially get terpenes from another source to augment the effects or the ability of the phytocannabinoids in a separate plant and make it actually more effective?
absolutely. Yep, we do a lot of that. So,
Oh, wow.
a lot of our.
Well, I guess
work
that's the end
comes
for show
through
tonight.
that,
Thanks, guys.
so.
I want everybody here.
Yeah, a molecule is a molecule,
Right.
So
Right,
at
doesn't
the
matter
right
where it comes
purity,
from.
Same molecule. So as long as you got it as the right molecule and not the wrong one or a wrong isomer or something like that. But yeah, you need D-limonene, not L. So
All right,
got to make sure you see that the right way.
That's
but-
an enantiomer, right? That's the enantiomer. And the enantiomer is a mirror image.
Yeah.
So even though you've got two, they're not exactly the same. The mirror image, if you turn it like this is going this way, this is going that way.
non-superimposable mirror image, right?
Exactly.
Your hands, your thumbs
So-
don't match up.
Non-superimposable.
Mirror
Like
image.
it.
That's called
Got
an
it.
enantiomer.
Yeah.
So my question is this: is that if you have a martini
Yeah.
and
two.
you go or 3, and you use the lemon rind,
Mm-hmm.
and they scrape it a little bit,
Sure.
there's going to be some terpenes.
A lot of limonene. Yeah.
Right, a lot of limonene.
Limonene's
It's
large
gonna-
in citrus.
Right, it's going to show up in your. Does limonene only work to augment or to facilitate the effect of the cannabinoids, or does the limonene itself have a physiological effect?
So they have it by themselves. That's how aromatherapy works. That's how you can have an impact by just scent. So you're never smelling cannabinoids when you smell cannabis either. And some people say they feel better just smelling it.
But
So,
That's
what,
all
you're smelling
terpene
terpenes,
based.
right?
Yeah. Yep. Never smelling a cannabinoid.
Now, Taupe knows the smell of the terpenes based on scratch and sniff from Cosmopolitan. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
So let me say
We've
this.
made scratch and sniff stickers too.
Have you really?
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Is it?
Yeah, a lot of people really liked it, and I've had some patients say I'm starting to feel a little better. They couldn't get into a Prop 215 section at an event because they were from another state, and they said my anxiety is going down just from smelling the stickers. Is that possible? It certainly is.
Wow.
So, I think there's a whole lot of the magic of cannabis comes from terpenes. So if we wanted single molecule THC, Marinol will be very popular.
Right, but it's
And
not that. It's
So,
not that.
no.
Yeah, because the last two researchers that I've had meetings with, they're only focused on the terpenes.
Those two kids we had in here 2 weeks ago were all about the terpenes too. They said that the terpenes must start breeding and
It's
stuff.
nice to see. When we started testing in 2011, we had to give the test away. No one thought it was valuable and didn't know what the word meant.
Absolutely
Now
not.
here it's terpy, extra terps.
So yeah,
terp
again,
sauce,
like,
all
can
that
you
good
go over
stuff.
for our audience like what it is? Like, so first of all, I think most cannabis users or people around this world know that sativa and indica are the kind of the two strains that they.
Those are
kinda
the
pick from.
morphologies of the plant.
Right.
So they don't indicate exactly what physiological response I'll get. But
They
I think
do
that's,
not.
they do not.
But that's
the
a misnomer if I've
for
ever
sure.
thought of
Right,
one.
morphology mean the shape.
But
Yep,
you think
shape,
it's
cycle time, how
Right.
you grow it.
but you think it's a head high versus body high. Most people would tell you that, right?
Because
that's the common conception. And
Right,
it may
because
happen
it's
for
easy.
some, but yeah.
It's just an
Right,
easy.
it's an easy marketing
It's an easy
term.
marketing thing.
Yeah.
But you're saying it's not true.
No, it won't hold for everyone. So I think it's unfair to tell an insomniac this indica is going to make you go to sleep. When
Right.
in fact, those molecules didn't make them feel that way.
Everybody
and now
I
they
know
think
that smokes
cannabis isn't
cannabis
good for them.
They say that though. Oh, I need an indica because I'm going to sleep. I need a sativa because I'm going to be going to a
It might
concert.
just be large amounts of THC makes
But it
them go
really
to
doesn't
sleep.
make a difference.
Well, it makes a physiological difference for sure. So what's the right cannabis composition for you as a patient? What do
I
you
see.
need? When do you need what? And I think if we can't communicate about it the right way, we're never going to get to which molecules are
Okay, so
driving which
after the
response.
sativa indica thing, then there's these things that the doc's talking about, the phytocannabinoids. There's
Well, the other friend, the
phytocannabinoids,
right.
CBD, THC,
CBN,
CBN, these things, right?
CBD.
Yeah.
And then the next thing would be the terpenes.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, is there another thing that we don't know about yet?
Flavonoids.
Probably flavonoids. Yeah.
Flavonoids.
Yep. And maybe the other oils, fats, and wax that's in there. What's causing all of the responses? So you can see where certain fat molecules are good from like extra virgin olive oil. They're impacting the endocannabinoid system. It's very possible that you have these molecules doing that too.
So this
But which
suddenly
ones
got
are you getting
really
when?
complex, though, right?
Well, not really. I mean,
It
we're-
is if you want to really
It's
pin down what
really
you're
Well,
taking.
it is if you're a communications major from Ohio State. But for people who've actually done science, it's not that big a deal.
I mean,
but I will say
Very
this.
fun
Let
and
me-
exciting
well,
instead.
let me say this. Let me just throw this out there. There's a new app that you can get where you can actually get a custom-made suit or shirt online.
Right.
Right? You
Takes a picture of
take
your
a picture
side,
of
right?
you.
Cool.
They do all this kind of stuff. Are we not at some point heading to the point where you can customize individual cannabis for the patient?
Oh, sure. Like, I mean, the question is it one strain per patient, or does one of those strains reach 80% of the population for that type of indication? I think we
Well,
don't
here's the
really
problem.
know what our compositions are not standardized enough, right? We don't have a consistent cultivation effort or an oil that's made consistently the same across 50 or 100 molecules. We're just like randomly looking at one or two and saying, well, that's telling me everything about it, but it doesn't. So
Well,
it falls
listen,
short
if
there.
I was buying a pair of pants that was one size fits all, I agree with you.
yeah.
Elastic.
That's not the pants. I mean, can we get to the point where you can pinpoint this is the strain that's ideal for you?
Yeah, I
And-
think so.
And
for sure.
what is going to be the criteria to get it to that point? I mean, what would you have to do? I mean, you're going online, you can sit there, you plug in all of your shape and this and that, and all of a sudden you get a suit. What are you going to have to plug in from a scientist
Right.
in order to be able to figure out what's the thing that's going to work best for you?
There are probably multiple ways we could actually get there. Which way is faster or slower, or which way could we start to do it today without knowing everything? So if I could, in theory, map every possible receptor a cannabinoid and terpene interacted with, start to load up software programs and say, I think I can profile you genetically, see which ones are expressed, and then start to design medicine. Or I can give you 5 or 10 different cannabis samples and start to see which ones you're responding to and kind of narrow down from there.
Now,
So
hold
it
on a
does
second.
matter how you ingest and which way you're taking that, and your dose is probably individualized.
I was just going to ask you that, Dr. Rabert. You said that number one, if you found whatever 10% THC, 3% CBD, whatever that may be,
Mm-hmm.
if you give that to an individual, let's say Topo, if you give it to him with a vaporizer or flowers
Yep.
or edibles, he'll have a completely
Wildly
different,
different.
wildly different
Well,
experience.
yeah, you can have a similar one in some respects, but it's going to be different. I mean, the amount of time it takes to interact with you and feel the impact, very different if you're orally ingesting it versus inhaling it.
And then
The
on top of
duration
that,
it, and then what's actually in the bloodstream, if you orally consume, it's the 11-hydroxy metabolites or the first pass metabolites, not so much what you get when you inhale. So if I inhale, I have much more THC and CBD versus the 11-hydroxy versions of those, or 7-hydroxy CBD. So that is a very different blood concentration and profile that your body is feeling over a different duration of time. So different molecules.
on top of
different
that,
effects.
one second,
I
can I ask
think
something?
I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Okay. I hope I know.
If we get to the point where we can actually design a cannabis product that's perfect for you, just like we're ordering a suit online, would it be based on genetics of the plant and the individual where there's an interaction? Would it be based upon subjective response to testing multiple strains, or would it be a combination of the both?
Well, I think you need to standardize from the genetics. So I think a lot of people think if I have genetics and I can start with this plant, I'm going to get a certain endpoint, but it's impacted by environment. So if I have like the extreme outdoor versus indoor, I might have a very different terpene profile or cannabinoid expression in each of those. So even if I start at the same place, I didn't end up consuming the same molecules.
So if you
in the
took
end.
two clones and you grew one outside and one inside, they
It's
would
gonna
be
be
different.
We've seen them be different.
Isn't that
Yeah.
amazing?
Yeah.
Well, the other thing I
the
wanted to
impact
ask
of
was that,
environment.
okay, so let's say that we picked out this thing for Topin. It's 10% THC, 5% CBD, whatever. And you say this helps, we find out that this helps him sleep. This works great for
Yeah.
anti-anxiety sleeping. And we gave that same thing to the Dr. Frank. That may not necessarily do
Correct.
that for him.
Right. That might
That's
not
what we're
work for
talking
him.
about, Ron. We're talking about actually
I'm trying to dumb
designing.
it down for the
And
audience.
even-
but I-
we have a
if I-
very dumb
yeah.
audience.
But I
Frank.
want to take it to the next level. So let's say, because we know that with cannabis, there's a certain amount of tolerance that can be developed with time. So you design a cannabis profile for a patient that works for a short
Okay.
period of time,
Yep.
and then they get tolerant, and you'd have to make adjustments to that, correct?
Yeah.
Whether
But
either-
tolerant to what? Tolerant to that,
that-
psychoactive
and that's
side
what I was about
effect,
to ask
or tolerant to the
That's
pain relief?
exactly. What does tolerance mean?
Awesome.
Yeah.
What is tolerance?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I
Is
think
that
it's
reaction
often
to-
referred to that psychoactive effect, right?
Just the
one that's
psychoactive
giving me
effect.
which is purportedly a side effect of the medicine, right? If you can look at it that way, right? So the side effect of a smile instead of my heart and lungs shutting off seems to be a better alternative. But it can go away, right? So your body adjusts to that, it downregulates that. You don't have that effect, but you're still getting the medicinal relief. So I might have pain and inflammation going down, but I'm not feeling the psychoactive head effects because my body's like, that's in my environment. I can't function that well. Turn that down and turn it off.
Yeah, it's so funny because when I sit with and talk to patients all day, and so how do I know what dose to use? I can't tell you. I have absolutely no idea how it's going to work. I don't know what you're going to use. I don't know where you're going to go. I do know that you're not the first person with headaches who's going to use cannabis. So go in there and ask the dispensary or the delivery service that wherever you're working with, ask what those people are using, and get the smallest amount of as many different strains as you can afford so you find out what works for you. And then I'm thinking about that later. I'm thinking to myself, well, if they don't have the headache at that particular time and they use it, how are we going to know
If it worked or
if
not.
it worked
If
or
it
not?
works or not, yeah.
I mean, I don't have an answer to any of these questions.
I think that's good advice. Start low and go slow. Minimum effective dose. Put the med in medicine. I like to think of it that way. Like more you take, like there's a fine line between medicine and poison, and that's dose, right? So
Right.
too much cannabinoids can be a bad thing too. You're trying to balance a system that causes a balance for you. So you don't want to overdo it. That could be bad as well. So.
But the funny thing about the cannabis is there's so many components.
Right.
It's not just like you're
Right.
taking acetaminophen. You-
Right,
I was just going
right,
to say
right.
this, Doc. Listen,
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about flavonoids,
Right.
phytocannabinoids.
Look
you're
at all
talking
these
about
different things,
terpenes.
right.
I mean, there's just so many
What are you
variables.
inhaling? What are you ingesting?
Hey,
Right? Are you
What
using it as a
consume?
rub? Or are you using it as an ingestible? Are you using it as a vaginal spray?
how are you going to take it?
Yeah.
That is how. Okay, so I just had this injury that we talked about at
Okay,
nauseum.
what injury did you have, Ron?
Ad nauseum.
What happened?
So when
Did
I
you
went
tear
in,
your hamstring
the
trying to
doctor said,
trying to
"Here's
water ski?"
tramadol. Take
Okay.
2 of these every 4
Yeah.
hours. Here's Silaxin. Take 4 of these
Oh,
every
no.
whatever it was.
Muscle relaxant.
But it's
Yeah.
like clear as a day. Take these every 4 hours. Take
Yeah.
this, and this is the answer
Right.
for you. Cannabis isn't like that. You can't say to the guy, "Go take
Listen,
train wreck, 2 doses."
Even tramadol
Right?
laxatives
You
like
could.
that
You
either.
have the same
I
physiological
know, but we do it.
response.
People aren't used to that for medicine. They're used to medicine being. It says on here twice a day, every so many hours.
So let's imagine I made a pill and I put, a certain number of milligrams and certain amount of terpenes.
Should I close
in
my
there
eyes?
every single time? And then I could tell you take this every 4 or 6 hours, or take.
But we
1
don't
or
have
2.
that yet.
Oh, we do. They're hitting the market now.
Oh,
so I think
that'll
we're
be good.
starting to get there, and we'll see much more of that standardized type of product as regulations come in California. So
All right,
we
I got
do
a
see
question
them
for
in
you.
other places.
So you're doing a lot of testing.
Mm-hmm.
What lab are you at?
The workshop lab.
Okay.
Yep.
That's WERC.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Where are you on pesticides and the federal government? I mean, it can't be very clear as to what pesticides you can use, which you can't use. I know you tested for it.
Yeah.
Is there a play out there in trying to figure out how to get the corner the market on what pesticides to use for a plant?
A good, healthy cannabis plant shouldn't need any. So
No,
that would be great.
I get
that would
that,
be great.
but listen,
agriculture at scale will require it.
Well,
So
of course, you got spider mites,
yeah.
you got snowy mildew, you got the stuff.
most likely there's something you're going to need. But integrated pest management, organic practices, things of that type would be the first and best step that we can take. But if you're going to use something, what's missing is we don't know what the application standards are. So nothing on the market has been applied to cannabis to know when to apply it, how much to apply when, and when it would go down to a safe level, and what is the definition of safe level for a cannabis product. We can tell like an orally consumable product is easy to kind of compare to apples and grapes. Like you hear a lot about malathion or myclobutanil especially, right? If I heat it up, it turns to cyanide. Oh, this must be
I went
the
to
worst
grammar
thing ever.
school with a kid named Michael Butanelli, which is weird. It was Italian school.
The
Yeah.
misconception is it turns into cyanide. Well, combusting the plant material actually generates more cyanide than your myclobutanil breaking apart. So
Ron.
it's not as...
I thought so.
I told you.
I've always thought that.
I've told you this.
That's
I
not the
told you
concern.
once. I told you 10 times.
The bigger concern is myclobutanil is actually less toxic when it's orally consumed and your liver impacts it and does its metabolism before it hits your bloodstream than if you were to inhale that compound directly.
Well,
So
listen, I
how
already,
much I inhale
I already
or
know
orally
all this stuff.
consume
For
is
those
different.
people who aren't as educated as me, what is myclobutanil?
It's a pesticide.
It's a
fungicide.
pesticide.
Yeah.
Now, I got a buddy of mine who's got a brother who works as an attorney for the EPA,
Okay.
and they're trying to figure out
Yeah.
what the next move is here as far as pesticides and what's going to be accepted, what's not going to be accepted. And I'm already convinced everybody's corrupt. So I got to figure that at some point somebody who has more money in myclobutanil or whatever it's going to call is going to be able to get this through because they got more money to push this through. We see that the rules from county to county, street to street, state to state are completely different. The same thing is going to happen with the pesticides, correct? I mean, you're going to get...
Yep. You have different limits in Colorado, Washington, Oregon, and we're still proposed here. So they're going to try and finalize them by the end of the year.
So we don't have anything in California till the first of the year.
Currently, no.
Okay.
No.
So there's no pesticides.
So technically there's no pesticide allowed,
Right.
but they will permit some of those, and they'll permit them at certain levels, but the levels have not been established. And there's a list of about 65 that they're probably going to propose could be allowed at certain levels.
How do they determine what these levels are?
So that's the challenge.
A challenge.
It's insane.
It doesn't make any sense.
There's math. You can actually extrapolate and try and infer safety margins from what we know. So it's easy if I say, here's a concentrate that I'm going to put in an edible and orally consume.
Right.
So I can say if this is applied to fruits and vegetables, I know how much we've allowed in an oral consumption route, what toxicity studies have been done on animals, and how that's been applied to fruits and vegetable limits.
Got it.
So that's easy.
Right.
But then how do I deal with an inhalable?
Right.
So that is really not known. We don't have any data on what
Well,
they
how do
turn
you
into
how do
when
you
we
deal with an
inhale.
inhalable? How do you deal with a gummy bear? How do you deal with a Floria
Gummy
vaginal
bears
spray?
food. Yeah, that's another one.
I mean,
Topicals or
how do you deal with any of this
sublinguals
stuff?
or a patch or anything like that. I think you say if I can take this orally, am I ingesting it in the same route? Easy. Other than that, I need to just take caution and say, how do I go further down in the limits to say we don't know, but this is what we purport may be safe or might be in that fashion.
Now,
But we really don't know.
You understand big picture that the antis, the prohibitionists, they want we don't know. They want this.
Then they can go see.
Well, I think it's about
Right.
informing the consumer, right? How much do we know about what's on our food when they say you can have some on your apples and grapes?
Toop?
Like-
Anything? No.
Like, I mean, we say, all right,
Good
it
point.
didn't seem to work on the rat or the dog that much, and maybe it's okay if we extrapolate to us. But yet we see these things persist in our environment, see all sorts of physiological problems that arise. Is it because of those things? I don't know. Like, what limit is best or not? Like, they weren't here many thousands of years ago, and now they're here.
Well, yeah, I guess here's my biggest problem with all of this research is that there's such a negative bias against cannabis that anything that comes out that might be negative,
Right.
they're going to jump on us. Look,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
told you.
Yeah.
They're not going to jump on the good stuff. They're going to jump on the bad stuff.
Right.
And listen, just like with Trump with Russia, you follow the information to wherever it goes. No matter what happens, that's what you. And if it turns out that this is a negative, then we need to know this because we're trying to actually educate our patients. We need to know this is not just rah-rah cannabis. Show us the studies, show us that it works, and then we'll figure out what to tell our people from here. So, I mean, my biggest concern is there's so many variables
Yeah.
with this plant. How do you get the study? How do you get the study that passes all the sniff tests?
Well, I would even say you can go further and say all the studies that had been done.
Don't
that
tell me what
people
to say.
claimed were bad.
This is
like,
my
Give him
show.
some good pointers.
This is my show.
You can say that the previous studies were confounded because they could have been contaminated with pesticides or other problems.
Right,
So
that's a good point.
Well,
what's
listen,
the
that's not
negative
that's
because
not
of
helping. That's not helping.
That's actually
me
a
get
great
the-
point we never talked
Yeah,
about.
I
can
understand,
start
but
there,
I'm not
but
getting the
how do
answer to
I-
the question.
So I
though.
can answer it. You cultivate it without any of those additives, and then you take it through a study in that fashion. So can I bring it to market in a fashion that didn't have anything extra added to the plant other than what the plant produces itself? That answer is yes, they can definitely do that. So if you can produce it in that fashion, or you can and then even extraction can take care of mold, fungus, or other microbiological contaminants that might have shown up, then you can standardize the cultivation, the extraction, and the formulation methods. Then you have something consistent, and you can start to study there. But we are not really that close to standardizing all of those just yet.
Well, and here's
If you
go ahead.
can't, if you cannot, because cannabis is a Schedule I drug, get the IRB to sign off on a study in the United States that would allow us what is it, International Review Board, Internal Review Board, whatever IRB stands for. If you cannot get them to sign off, and you're willing to self-fund these studies, is it going to hold the same scientific value in the community as opposed to an IRB study?
No, I think most publications will require that, and the FDA would certainly require, institutional review boards sign off on it, placebo-controlled, crossover,
Good luck with
double-blinded
that.
studies.
Yeah,
and
but if it's Schedule
things of
I,
that
it
type.
can't happen.
So we have Sue Sisley with her PTSD
Oh,
study.
yeah.
we
talked
know
about
we,
that
we
earlier.
know Sue,
Starting to go, and I
but
think
she's
we'll
but
start
she's
to
using the
see some
dirt
of
weed
that.
from Mississippi.
Yeah. I don't know how clean that stuff is.
It's horrible.
So,
That's coming up in the news segment.
It's
there,
got
Don.
like less than 5% THC. I mean,
Right.
and it's been
Yeah.
it's good.
very
it's-
different than what we see in the rest of the market.
I mean, I guess I'm trying to figure out is the deck stacked against this?
Oh, it's an uphill battle for sure, but it's not undoable.
It is doable.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to take a lot of will and a lot of effort and a
Is
lot
it-
of capital to
do you
get there,
think-
but it's doable.
It would be easier to do this than for Ron to stand up on water.
Here we go. Back to the. So basically, these people come in. They say, "Look, I smoked this thing, one strain or another, train wreck, for example." But you took 40 different strains that were branded a certain way, and you found that 83% of them were outside of even a 10% margin. Is
No,
that
that
true?
was in edible products.
In edible
So
products, right?
we took 43, and somebody else picked the samples. So the Johns
Okay.
Hopkins researchers sampled the edible products across different marketplaces, brought us those products, and we tested them and saw how accurate are they according to how much the dose was on the label. So if it said 10 milligrams, how close was I to 10 milligrams? And we used a cutoff of plus or minus 10% because that's what over-the-counter medications are. And 83% of those were outside of that 10% variability.
83% of them are
So most
off.
of the time you're not consuming
Well, most of
10
them-
milligrams. It was
Well, most of
usually
them
a lot
over
more.
or under.
Most of them were over.
63% were over.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
See, the good news is
Yeah.
at least you're getting over.
So
But-
we did do the
Well.
Jack Harris strain, though. We did
Okay.
take a strain of a certain type of name, and we used terpene profiling to give it a chemical fingerprint and identify how similar is that to the other ones named the same thing. and 30% of those weren't even close either. So you've got a lot of issues in identifying things the right way.
Now, this is bad if you're a new user because you're going to try something that says 10 milligrams.
Yeah.
And 65% of the time, it's going to be way over that. So
right.
go
Now
slow and low.
Yeah, and it will be better within regulations in California.
After January.
When they actually enforce the regulations or require
Now, are
testing.
they? You think January they'll actually start enforcing?
They won't enforce them that. No. They've already got rampant
in
plans.
theory, yeah.
And maybe more so the end of 2018 we might see it. But
that
other
was
states see it.
From
It will
everything I
require-
see, it's end of 2018, early 2019.
Probably closer to that. But it will require homogenization and studies of that to make sure dose is uniform across every unit. And you'll have to be within a pretty tight tolerance of if you put 10 or 2.5 milligrams on there, that's what it's
You got to
gonna
be close.
Yeah. So you will have to be within 15% of that. So there's a pretty, that's a pretty narrow window. And as the numbers get smaller, it's a much more narrow window. So
Because it's harder, yeah, right.
yeah. It's much harder to make the lower dose
Is
ones
that right?
than the higher dose ones.
I would think.
Thank you, Ron.
Doc, let's talk about some news.
Sure.
We're going to do a little news for you, and please feel free to jump in or criticize
Okay.
or whatever.
Okay.
So your dear friend Jeff Sessions is at it again.
Listen, you just had a picture of Jeff Sessions tattooed on your ass.
Well, that's my business, though.
All right.
So as we know, a week or so ago, we talked about him writing that letter to the governors of the states that legalized
This was
cannabis.
before he got shot in the
previous to me getting shot in the
ass.
privates. So now the governors are writing letters back to him, just
Saying,
how
listen,
you'd like it.
listen.
Go, yeah.
Why don't you go somewhere else?
The governor of Alaska wrote back. Bill Walker wrote back and said, supporting his thing, saying that, look, I believe marijuana should be an issue implemented and regulated by the states. Stay out of our business, which is awesome. That's right up your alley, Doc. Washington governor
States' rights.
Jay Inslee is the governor
It's
of
pronounced
Washington.
Inslee.
He also wrote a letter defending the state's laws, saying, and exactly what we talked about on this show, he pointed out that in the letter, Jeff Sessions didn't make a distinction between marijuana sales that were legal and those that were illegal. Remember?
Perhaps dated.
Well, that doesn't fit into
information.
what he's trying to accomplish here.
Exactly. It turns out that Sessions mentioned more than a dozen THC extraction labs that exploded. Those were all illegal labs, every one of them.
Right, which is an argument for regulation.
Exactly. He shot himself. Isn't that crazy?
He doesn't see it that way.
He doesn't see it that way. But
We're living in half-truths, almost lies. That's where we live right now.
there's some fine people on that side, too.
On both sides.
On both sides.
Listen, the fact that you can walk around with a Nazi swastika, say the Jews do not own us, the blacks do not own us, blood and soil. Listen,
good-
just
some good people
because
in there.
listen, they're business owners. they're selling cars at the local auto mall. These are some very, very fine people, Ron. I take offense at what you're saying tonight.
Those are some fine people, huh, Frank?
Very, very fine people.
All right, let's go
These are
back
the
to our topic at hand, which is cannabis. Jeff Sessions also, listen to this. This is exactly what we were just touching on with Sue Sicily. A year ago, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency, as we talked about on this show, began accepting applications to grow cannabis for research, as we all know. This move was meant to improve the availability and quality of cannabis for scientific research because the stuff at Mississippi sucks.
Yep.
As part of the approval process, though, the DEA said it needs to get the Department of Justice signed off, which is, of course, headed by Topo and Jeff Sessions. The DEA administrator at the time, your buddy Chuck Rosenberg,
and Topa.
he said last year the DEA would support and promote legitimate research regarding marijuana. However, nothing has come of it. Jeff Sessions has bottlenecked this. Not one single one has got through. They've had
No
2
license today,
dozen applications go in, and they get to the Department of Justice, and they sit on his desk. Not one has been approved. So as it stands today, the only drugs available of cannabis to be studied are from the University of Mississippi.
Right.
Even
Ron,
though they're
I live
supposed
in the
to
great
open this up.
state of California.
Yes, you do.
Great state of California did not elect this current president nor his administration. So you're from Ohio. Now you guys,
Now, why do we have to go there?
you guys actually elected this guy, and then you sit on this show and complain. Ron, I have absolutely no patience for you at this particular
I
point.
can't vote in Ohio. I live here. I'm I'm sorry. I'm a resident. I apologize.
Well, I think with cannabis, it's interesting. Like, how can we study it most effectively within our lifetime? Like, I don't want to wait forever to figure out the answer.
Exactly.
So how do we help people who are ailing and suffering today? And how do we get there as fast as possible? The answer is have as much diversity as you can and study that as much as you can as well. So restricting it to 1 strain, 2 strains, very small compositions is going to just take an infinite amount of time to go after that.
What do we do about
why
sessions
not
blocking
open
it?
it up? Because we know it's not physiologically super harmful. It's not going to shut off your heart and lungs. It's not got the drawbacks of opioids. It's a much better alternative. We already understand that. So why can't we start to look at it better inside the clinic with a lot of diversity?
Well, Jeff Sessions doesn't understand that because he's blocking this. What do we do about that?
I think we have to speak up perhaps louder.
The company American Green Incorporated, which is a maker of cannabis products, just bought an entire town in California.
Yeah,
Do you know about this?
The ghost town.
Nipton, yeah. It's 20 minutes from the state line. It's right on our way to Vegas, buddy. They bought it for $5 million, and they're going to put $2.5 million into it in the next year and a half. It's going to become a cannabis-friendly tourist destination. How great is this?
Maybe.
Well, that's the idea.
Well, they now have control of the city council, right? So
They own everything.
There's a mayor.
yeah.
That's all there is.
It's
He
120
can write
acres.
his ordinance. He can make sure the rules are, allowing for that within the state law, so they can't go outside of that either. But yeah, they can open it up.
They have 16
well,
residents.
theoretically, why can't we just start another town somewhere else?
We could,
I think you can. Yeah.
because you need the $5 million.
Or there's ways to incorporate other areas out of unincorporated counties and stuff like that. So there are mechanisms.
I would
for
like
that.
to start my own town.
The other way is to talk
Guess
to
who's
your
the mayor?
current city council members and convince them to just do it as well. So
I'm
that might be a little harder.
I'm afraid of other people. I really am.
I think this is a great idea. This is right by the state line. If everybody knows where that is, when you live in L.A., you drive up to Vegas, you go to the state line.
Yeah.
So this is like kind of a known area. It's right between L.A. and Vegas. It's
well, not really between. It's between Baker.
much
It's-
closer to Vegas.
Baker and Vegas.
But everybody passes through there on your way to Vegas. It's 120 acres of land. They have a general store, hotel, a
Bought it
school.
for $5 million.
$5 million. They plan on keeping the existing structures and building some new ones. It's all going to be powered by renewable energy. And it used to be a mining town in 1900. This was a mining town, and it
For about a
exploded
week and a
'cause of-
half.
Well,
And they couldn't find anything there. So they just picked up and left.
they're going to manufacture water infused with CBD there, which is very interesting.
Oh.
And it'll also have
CBD from hemp or CBD from cannabis?
Well, in California, it's going to be from cannabis.
Isn't hemp cannabis too?
That's the next story. We're coming to
Hold on a
we're
second.
coming to the next story.
It's a legal definition that's different. It's a cannabis plant as well,
That's
right?
true.
But the
So,
definition of hemp is,
phytologically.
it's just like a different strain or a different cultivar of cannabis.
Okay.
So
But
it
they're all
is very
cannabis.
different, but it's all cannabis. Yeah.
Okay.
And you can
Ron,
have very
I love having a
different
scientist
I
sitting
told-
right next to me.
Well, I've been on the show with you for years now, Ron. So I don't know.
I know, but a real doctor sitting right next to me is really a treat.
how's your
for me.
hamstring, jerk off?
So the town's going to have a production site for edible marijuana products, retail stores. They're going to have artists there. It's a pretty interesting development.
What kind of artist?
Topo for one.
Bullshit artist.
Bullshit artists. So the next new thing, the next story I have is CBD water could be the next big trend. And they're saying that it was very difficult to figure out how to infuse CBD into water because
For
it doesn't
some.
really go in. For some. I'm sure you could do it here at
Yeah,
the table,
it's pretty
right?
easy.
Is it?
Yeah,
Well, they
it's
said they use
not that hard.
nanotechnology to get it
I
into
don't think you
molecules.
need to do that.
Well, that's what they're
Another
doing.
nano buzzword for marketing purposes. So
Is that
it's an emulsion, right? So emulsifiers will
You put something in the
oil
water, you
into
shake it up, and then
They say it doesn't blend well.
you make
Standard
sure that the
food chemistry
solute's not big in the
practice.
solvent.
I
and
love
you're
that
good
he
to
could
go.
just do it, you know.
Wow.
So that's going to be the next big
I'm
thing.
a scientist.
They think. Ish.
Yeah.
I did this. I did all this stuff already.
Well, they think this will be the big next trend. I think that's true. What do
If
you
it's
think?
single molecule CBD, it won't be. Right.
Why is that?
So what they are understanding out of some reports in Israel is single molecule CBD has an exceptionally narrow therapeutic window. It doesn't help as many people for as much as you would want it to. But whole plant or more broad-based profiles, more minor cannabinoids and terpenes and other things from the plant have a much broader therapeutic
Now,
window.
how will the consumer know whether that is single
He's
molecule?
gonna tell
or
him.
not?
So what it's tested for and what else is put on the label based and supported by testing. So California law will require that if you're going to say that it has these things in there, you've tested for it and validated that it
So if it
them.
has it on there and it's been tested, then we'll be fine. So because I think that's a great way to get CBD.
Well, as long as he's doing the testing, I trust this guy.
Right.
He's wearing maroon.
Yeah, no, it's important that it is validated. I think consumer protection comes from information, comes from, proper labeling, which is supported by accurate testing.
And what a great idea, putting that into water, because there's like smart water now and all this.
That
I
is
think
a good
vitamin
idea.
water, I think it's
Definitely.
a great idea. All right, Doc, for the last story of the day, we're going to talk about Colorado's hit another milestone. As you know, they legalized recreational cannabis in 2014, January 1st. Topo, this question's for you.
Uh-oh.
How much tax have they raised in 3.5 years?
Was it 14 or 12? Or they implemented it in
They
14?
implemented in January 1st,
Okay.
2014.
Yeah.
Dope.
Yeah.
Go ahead, take a shot. Throw a number out there.
Quick.
200 million.
200 million.
More.
Something, of course.
Give me a
more.
number.
Just
A
give us
billion.
A million?
a
Billion.
billion, he said.
Okay, well, it's half that. $506 million in 3.5 years. That's pretty remarkable. Recreational marijuana sales in the month of May alone were $127 million, which is 12 months in a row over $100 million in recreational sales. This is just the tax. That's pretty high.
That's a lot, yeah.
A lot of money.
And so were they.
Well, pardon that pun there, folks. What is the average amount of THC in a marijuana pre-roll joint?
Oh, and pre-rolls, I wouldn't know exactly what that is, but it's probably more
thank you for
8
that.
to 10, I would guess. So we
Milligrams.
sampled 2,200 different samples, which were mostly out of 1 pound bags at dispensaries, and the average in that was 16%. But our data is probably skewed because no one wants to test the lower number, right? So here, test 10 of the 70 things I have. Well, they're not giving
These
me
are
the
the high
10 worst
ones,
ones,
right.
right? They're giving me the 10 best ones. So
Would you agree with that, Doc?
Absolutely.
Would you guys like to arm wrestle over this?
no thanks.
Why would we want to arm wrestle?
I don't know.
We agree.
They agree.
If I arm wrestled you right now, would you rip your biceps tendon or your hamstring?
My hamstring. I got a hammy, bad hammy.
Yeah, I got bad hammy. So no matter what happens to you, you're gonna rip something.
No, any athletic event whatsoever, I'm going down. Dr. Raber, where can our audience find you? And
We're on Instagram and online at theworkshop.com. THEWERCSHOP.
awesome. You can find the doc at drfrank.com. You can download
And we
our
can say
show.
Captain Ron Radio. I heard.
I have a brand new website. I have a first Facebook page at age 50
Right. Ish.
ish, and it is at Captain Ron Radio.
How's your hamstring?
Not good. You can download our show on iTunes, find us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to Truth Be Told on YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, that's
Eh.
plus minus. You can give a shit about it. But this weekend, Captain Ron and I will be putting together
Yes, we will.
a movie. We've entered the Producer Guild of America's Make Your Mark. So on Friday afternoon at 2 p.m., we're going to get a situation, a location, and 3 props. We have 51 hours to produce a 5-minute movie.
We did this last year, too.
entertaining.
Yeah.
It was fun.
That sounds like fun.
It's,
Yeah.
it's like all night. You're going through the night. It's going to be it's
like a hackathon for movies.
It's
type thing.
awesome.
He
It's
he
awesome.
buys a case of Monster, and we get a little
And
shaky
we go
by
to town.
Sunday.
We
It's a
go to
little nutty.
town. You give Tope a little bit of a tweedle, and then we take it from.
All right, on that bombshell, folks, we're going to let you go. We'll see you next week on Elevate the Conversation.
Have a great night, everybody.
Bye.
Now that you've found UBN Radio and discovered our quality talk shows, it's time to spread the word to friends, family, and the universe. 24 hours of music and talk. Radio without limits. That's why people keep coming back for more.